Hello there. I'm SykohFlare and welcome to SykohFlare's Narcissu. Let's just begin. On a blindingly bright day, on that very day of winter, 2001, 31,042 people, 2002. Never mind. Spring 1996, said to me. True, I wasn't very healthy ever since I was a child. Even so, I attended elementary school like all the others, and during summer breaks I often played until I was utterly tanned. June, shortly after my entry into middle school, the day after I'd ordered a swimsuit for the next month. My first hospitalization. On a day just before the first semester midterms, on a day when the first drops of rain were so cruelly cold. Falling from amidst the pure white of the overcast sky. Of course, the first time it had happened, all of my classmates came to visit me almost every day. And when I was released, they even came to my house on weekends to play. That was only the first time around. Autumn into winter, winter into spring, a vicious cycle. Hospitalization, release, clinics, and hospitalization again. And before I knew it, even the classmates I once called friends turned into acquaintances, and then into strangers. As if every changing of seasons, I was being erased from the collective memory. It seems that to all those normal people, my very existence was an unpleasant fact. And so, it looks like I've been erased. I'd spent so many seasons, so many light overcast skies, without the want or need to converse with anybody. For that matter, my English textbook never changed from that of a first-year middle school student before the first midterms. That is where my time seems to come to an end. Stage 9, Volume 24. Early summer 2004. Protagonist. Summer. Flowing sweat. The gigantic electronic scoreboard in the driver's license examination facility lit up all at once. My eyes and everyone else's looked for our respective numbers. 237, 237. In some of the columns of lit text, sure enough, my examination number was shining in the midst. Click-clack. A nearly empty train car, perhaps thanks to the beautiful afternoon. Almost alone in that train car, I was heading back home from the examination hall. My left hand held a new traffic regulations handbook. My breast pocket held my brand new driver's license. So now I've got a license as well. I muttered somewhat happily, but there were no strong feelings behind it. I never particularly wanted to drive a car. I never particularly had any motive for it. It was just that my colleagues in the Technical Institute both recommended that I at least get a driver's license. That night, when I told my parents I had gotten my license, they merely replied with an, "I see." When I asked if I could borrow the car, just for a test run, they instantly and currently just said one thing: no. While I didn't really want to drive the car or anything, the response was all too expected. Those were my parents for you. The next day, I awoke with a chest pain and went to the hospital. Sickness and I generally had nothing to do with each other, which is why I found the ER waiting room to be utterly boring. And just when I thought they were through examining me, they ordered an x-ray and some blood tests. Then they left. And again, I was left waiting for a long, long time. I'd already polished off 3 volumes of Shonen Jump and was about to start in the 4th when they admitted me to the hospital right then and there. And it seemed that my new license, which still lay snugly in my breast pocket, would have to wait a long time for its turn to come. Protagonist, autumn 2004. Right around when the all too noisy cicadas had finally gone silent, I once again found myself in the hospital, as per usual. Of course, it wasn't as if I had been there the entire time. I came and went. A futile cycle. My first surgery was a month before. After that, I started doing the 5-minute commute to and from the hospital by mode. And from then on, I was hospitalized, discharged, ordered to clinic, and hospitalized again and again and again. While I still had no clue what PET or IRISA stood for, I had no time at all. Several months had already passed. As my appetite decreased, my medications increased. I could feel my own physical strength atrophying away. I kept imagining that my legs were getting thinner. But the needle of the weight scale rudely informed me, it's not just your imagination. And yet I kept looking on at myself with detached interest, as if it were happening to somebody else entirely, as if I were looking at a scene on the TV or the like. My mind could not grasp what had so suddenly happened to my body. Nothing within me was telling me that this was real at all. And that's why, even though it all was happening to me, I kept looking on as if it were happening to someone far away. Protagonist, winter, 2004. A day of winter, around when Christmas trees had vanished from the streets. I was discharged home as a kind of year's end treat. It seemed like an exercise in total transience, but still, it made me feel slightly happy. I traveled back to a home I had not seen in a long time, in the midst of a freezing rain. Strangely enough, my entire family was there. My parents, who had never so much as talked to me, came out to meet me, if with terrible stilted smiles. And my little sister, with whom I've never had a pleasant word, had made my favorite egg cream stew and fried shrimp just for me. They made me sit at the table. They peeled tangerines for me. They were cruelly kind. It was an impressive display. At this point, a little thought occurred to me about my new driver's license, which was still stuffed away in my pocket. That perhaps things would end for the license without it ever having known any use. And surrounded by a trio of stilted, strained smiles, I kept that thought as if it were someone else's business, with dispassion, ambiguity, and total disinterest. January 2005. Protagonist. A new year began, and I returned to the hospital. But on this day, instead of my usual 4F room, I ended up in a conference room of sorts. They took me there. And then my father and doctors had a little talk. I joined in. Well, they talked to me. So this was their so-called announcement. They said it in a terribly roundabout fashion, but they told me that I was going to die. I see. That was my only reply. I had no other words. It was the only thing that left my mouth from beginning to end. And the doctor's ballpoint pens flew across the paper as if in response to my words. Those were probably hospice controlment procedures, business-like to the last. My father was the same. So it's this simple. It was the only real thought I had. That day I was transferred from 4F to 7F, from a 6-person room to a private room. It was a little different from the other wards, this 7F. First of all, the floors were sparkling clean, and second of all, the ceiling was higher than I'd ever seen it. The rooms are very nice and had large windows from which the warm daylight streamed in as if by design. But the windows only opened a little. I tested them out, and my head would just barely fit out of one. The color of my ID bracelet had changed as well. The bracelet I had worn ever since that first hospitalization, the one that had my name and blood type recorded on it. Its color had now changed from blue to white. A high ceiling, a white vinyl bracelet, a window that would not open more than 15 centimeters. The TV program celebrating the new year was still playing when I was transferred to this 7F. And it was at the dawn of that very year that I met her for the first time.
Yeah, you're in a super complicated relationship with your ex.
Narcissu.
Come on, show me around the place.
2005 7F. There was this place, kind of like a lounge at one side of the corridor across from the nurse's station. This generally deserted place held a few couches and chairs, as well as a large TV. Stupid programs commemorating the new year were still being broadcast on a 28-inch screen. And there was a girl who looked absolutely bored watching that absolutely boring TV. Short, in pink pajamas, a white bracelet on her wrist, just like mine. Impressively long hair that almost reached down to her hips. Hey, do you find that interesting? There was no deep purpose in asking. Simply, I had nothing else to do, so I started talking to her. Not really. Was her only reply to me. She didn't turn to face me at all, and she kept looking on with boredom at that TV as if I didn't even exist. Then don't watch it. Even as I thought this, I sat down in a chair next to her, and side by side we watched the TV. Nothing else to do, nothing we could do. So we sat there silently and watched TV. New Year celebration programs as per usual, a useless array of comedians and oddities. And every so often the MC's stupid shrill laughter resounding dryly in his white sun-drenched lounge. Say, tell me. The girl suddenly started talking to me, but her eyes were as white and glued to the TV screen. How many times is it for you now? What do you mean by that? How many times have you come here? To 7F? Sorry, I have no clue what you're talking about. I see. So it's your first time then? So she'd seen my confusion about her question and come to the right conclusion. Then since there's no one else around, and since it's my duty? There's this rule. Nodding slightly, she explained everything, that the rule was that someone here in 7F should tell newcomers the truth. I knew nothing. I understood everything less. And as if I did not even exist, she slowly started her speech. Then listen closely. Dots. Her words spoken methodically, one by one. They were a little different from all the ones I'd heard from the doctors about this place. In their business, like crisp syntaxes, they told me this is a place where one waits for medical advances. This is a place where one heals one's heart, and perhaps they might have been correct in a general sense. But according to the girl, that was just a party line. The truth was that this 7F was the only place in the hospital where medical treatments did not take place. This was just a place where you waited for your life to come to an end. Those were her words to me. I'd thought so as well. I'd even felt it before she'd spoken. See, this is my second time. Second time doing what? Coming here. And then she explained to me that nobody on 7F stayed here from the initial hospitalization all the way until death. While there was zero possibility of being cured, you were sent home if your condition was stable. But if it worsened again, you would be returned here. That cycle ended only in death. Whether it was at home or here on 7F, always one of the two, you were going to die. No way to escape it, it seemed. And with that meaning permeating her every word, she informed me that this was her second time up here. I'm only going to say this once, so listen closely now. She continued speaking, all the while staring at the blank TV screen. This wasn't idle chit-chat about when the lights went out or where the kitchen was or anything like that. This was something completely different. The third time you are discharged home, resign yourself. There won't be a fourth time. You will never go home again. If you ever want to escape, head toward the B station, not the A station. Eat nothing. That is the simplest shortcut. You leave the smallest burden on your family that way. It was as if she packed to the brim with matters like those. This was probably an oral tradition, relevant only to those who were going to die and kept by those who came here for that purpose. So this is the duty you were talking about? Yes, that's right. So do remember to perform it for a newcomer yourself someday, okay? With those words, she slowly stood up. She casually tossed her long hair and grazed it at my nose. I have to go get my temperature measured, so... Then she turned her back and started walking down the corridor. Now completely deserted, save me, for the lounge held only the laughter from the TV and the white flowers by the windowsill. In the end, she didn't even look at me once. Protagonist, January 10th. A few days later. New Year celebrations were over, and the middle and high school students were beginning a new term. And just as ever, she and I sat in this lounge, staring blankly at the TV. This is boring. So it is. So we said, but both of us kept our eyes on the screen. Hey, is this place always this way? I don't understand what you're getting at. I'm getting at how it's always deserting. Other than the nurses, doctors, and help staff, and other than her, I'd not seen a single person. Did everybody go home for the New Year or something? Do you really want to know? Well, I didn't mean... and I won't tell you. We disinterestedly tossed back and forth this exchange that could not even be called a conversation. The slight breeze coming from the window that would not open more than 15 centimeters. From time to time, her hair would sway, as if in agreement, the flowers at the windowsill would too. This was how we killed time day after day, staring at that boring, good-for-nothing TV. Click, click, click. Oh, here the two of you are. An elderly nurse said as she rushed towards us. From what I'd seen from the nurse's station, she was apparently the charge nurse of 7F. Well, Miss Satsumi, any fever? I'm fine. No fever. Satsumi. So that was her name. You really shouldn't be moving around like this. Dots. Do you understand? Everyone's worried about you. Well, whatever. Come now, what kind of answer is that? Oh, children these days. The nurse continued to scold and henpeck for some while longer, and the girl named Satsumi, just pretended not to notice it at all. She simply stared straight forward at that boring TV, paying that fussy nurse a little heed as she could. I'll be coming back later to draw some blood, okay? With those words, the charge nurse went back to the nurse's station. Hey, you know? Well, mind if I call you Satsumi? I asked this as I stared at her with my vinyl ID bracelet and the blood type and the name written within. Dots. Is something the matter, Satsumi? Why are you calling me that? Huh? You're younger than me. Hey, why am I younger than you? Nothing. That's just what I thought, was all. It wasn't that I was offended that she called me younger than her. It was just that no matter how I looked at it, I thought I was 5 to 6 years older than she was. That's why I took out my driver's license from my breast pocket and handed it directly to her. See? I may not seem it, but I'm 20. Dots. So you're younger after all. She only took a glance at my license before handing it back to me. I don't really get what you're saying. It doesn't really matter. I'm just a little older than you are, that's all. She murmured, as expressionless as ever. Her eyes were fixed on that boring TV, alright, but it also felt as if she was gazing at something far away. After they'd taken my AM vital signs, I snuck past some nurses and boarded the elevator. When I got to IF, I walked out of the outpatient clinic doors and walked outside of the hospital. My goal was the place that I had been told about not long ago, the faraway B station, not the nearby A station. It wasn't that I wanted to escape or anything. At 7F or at home, none of us died anywhere else. That's what I'd been told. And this B station, which this girl named Satsumi had apparently been to many times. That's why, at least just once, I wanted to see this place with my own eyes. Yeah, it's not if there's going to be a guard on duty. Even so, we were inhabitants of 7F, different from other patients. And thinking of vague maybes so early in the morning, I headed toward that station. My legs settled into a lazy gait as I glanced sidelong at people commuting to work or school. After about 25 minutes of this, I arrived in front of the station. Roughly 4 bus stops away when I calculated it out. Wow, there are a lot of people here, was my first impression of the B station. I stood out a bit because I was in pajamas, but I felt that if I could just buy a subway ticket, I'd be able to go anywhere, no question about it. I still had no idea why I'd been told to go to the B station, not the A station. But it looked as if it would be easy to escape if I really wanted to. She must have come here many times herself, so why did she remain on 7F right now? The station in the early morning. I stood there, thinking these thoughts as I watched the people rapidly passing me by. That night, after the lights out, bored of manga and unable to sleep, I wandered through the hospital alone. Certainly it wasn't supposed to be allowed after lights out, but we of 7F have a peculiar kind of liberty. So in the presence of no light, in the pitch black stillness of the lounge, that was where I found her. Hey, have you been looking outside today? Yeah? The darkened interior, she did not answer me. but she continued to stare at the window as if she had not. I immediately launched into what happened today. Oh, by the way, I went out to the station today. The B station, just as you taught me. I see. But her response did not change. I thought that she'd react with something because she'd been there before too. But now that I thought about it, did the fact that she was here mean that she had no intention of escaping in the first place? I'm going to be going home soon. What? She opened her mouth abruptly and spoke as if she'd seen right through me. But next time will be the third time, so we may not see each other again. Yeah, I guess. Probably what she was talking about was a temporary discharge from a hospital. She told me that nobody was discharged from 7F for more than 3 times. Unlike the elderly, given the progress of our diseases, this meant all the more to young people like us. We may not see each other for a while, was filled with that kind of meaning. Oh, which one have you decided on? Decided on? Where you're going to die? Thoughts. When that word death came up so abruptly, I was at a total loss for words. I don't know. Haven't thought about it yet. I see. It's just your first time after all. She murmured, looking desolate. Certainly it wasn't as if I was going to exist here forever. Just like everyone else, I would be admitted and discharged, slowly growing weak, and someday I would have to choose in the end, here on 7F or at home surrounded by these fake smiles. I don't want to die at home, but I don't want to die here either. Then what will you do? Dots. I guess the only thing is to go somewhere while I still have the strength to. Somewhere? You can't be this girl who was staying here on 7F when she could have escaped anytime she wanted. When I thought of that, do you have any other place to go? Dots. Do you want to stop me? What? Or do you want to come with me? Well, no, that wasn't what I was thinking about. Then don't ask. She was staring out of the window as she spoke, dispassionate, not looking at me once, the same as ever. But then, and just then, her usual expressionless face looked so very sad to me. I was a newcomer to 7F, just recently taught that the 3rd discharge was the last. And she was a girl who soon was to be discharged for the 2nd time. I still did not feel anything real about what was happening to me. But would I, too, come to wear such a face someday? The rain on morning twilight. Sometimes sleet, sometimes slow, always coming down. And I was sitting there watching TV in my usual place. 7F felt as devoid of a place of people as it always had been. Anything interesting? No, completely boring. She walked to my side. Saying no more, she sat down in a chair next to me. And that was how we began watching TV on this very day as well. She was probably in the same boat as me. Nothing else to do, nothing we could do. Oh, I had never seen her respond to the TV before. Was something the matter? Not really. Those were her usual words, but her response was anything but usual. And I looked at the screen, interested in anything that could move her so. There were nature scenes being displayed on TV. Beautiful hills and dales burgeoning with trees and flowers. and a vast spread of white flowers in the midst. I remembered those flowers from somewhere. They looked very similar to the white flowers that decorated the windowsills. Could those be the same flowers? Dots. You know, the same as those over there? I pointed to the flowers by the window as I said this. No. Really? They're the same variety, but they're not strictly the same. She glanced at the flowers by the window for a second, and then went back to gazing at the TV. She told me that they were different, but I couldn't see the distinction between the two. And it meant nothing to me whether flowers were the same or different. But what did mean something was this girl who usually never said a word more than she needed to. She was conversing in a rare form today, which is why I decided to follow along. Do you happen to know a lot about them? Flowers, that is. Not really. Really? But I don't see the difference. The flowers on the screen, and the flowers in the vase to her side. I continued to talk as I stared vacantly at the two. Look. Are these orchids or lilies? Dots. See, their pure as right? Dots. I had no interest, yet I kept trying to make the conversation. But she resumed her silence soon enough. And with her usual lack of expression, she continued staring at the boring TV screen. And just when I turned back to the TV, resigned to the fact that I'd get nothing more out of her. Narcissus. What? Those are narcissus. As she answered, she turned to face me for the first time. Her hip length hair swaying, she pointed at the TV screen and looked at me. The ID bracelet on her wrist was white. Her skin was white, just like the flowers on screen. And I swore I could see a tiny smile on that face that was looking at me for the first time.